Good morning, everybody. Welcome. It is week 7 in English 107, and that means we are in the second to the last week. I want to start off this session, this reminder video, by reminding you that without completing all the work, it is pretty much impossible to pass the course. There were a bunch of missing assignments for Unit 6, which was due last night. So if you have not turned in work from any of the previous units, it is super important that you get that in ASAP. Um, Next week is the last week of class. We do not have a major assignment next week, which helps a little bit, but everything next week has to be done by Friday instead of Sunday because grades are due. So this is the week to catch up. If there is something that you have missed, if there's something that you have been asked to revise and resubmit, now is the time to do it. Um, if you have not been reading your feedback on all of your assignments, now is a good time to go back and review all of the grades and all of the feedback that you've received because it's kind of your last chance to make improvements over the next couple of weeks. We do also have one final workshop tomorrow evening, Tuesday evening, June the 10th at 7 p.m. Eastern. And those, of course, are hosted by me. It's a good chance to come and talk live and get questions answered and things of that nature. So let's go ahead and look at Unit 7. All right, so we are going to go into the course first. And we're going into Unit 7. The theme this week is communication, and we are continuing to talk about things related to digital literacy, different types of communications, and of course, using research to support our position on a given topic. Um, we've talked before about the importance of fact versus opinion, not that we only have to use facts when we're writing, but that we have to back up our opinions with facts. So that's what we're focused on this week. You are going to be writing a full essay. Readings and resources this week, you do have some new things. You have chapters from the textbook on drafting and revision and editing and sharing, kind of the tail end part of the writing process. Because of course, this week you are going to be turning in a full essay. So you want to focus on the revision of it, making it as, as good as it can possibly be. And of course, even just proofreading and that sort of stuff. Now, this week we have some additional articles. This week we're focused on body language, and last week we had articles focused on soft skills. You are going to use both of those topics in your Unit 7 essay. So one of the articles that you read last week and one of the articles that you read this week are going to become the um, research for your essay. So last week we didn't write an essay, we wrote the annotated bibliography. So you'll choose one of those articles and you're going to choose one of these. You need to read all three of them, of course, but there's three to choose from. So we're going to be taking a look at those. We also have a discussion board that is focused on a video based on a movie called Tin Men. So you will watch this video, and that's what you're going to use for your discussion board. Supplemental resources, we've got a lot of good information about technology and research and all of those things, much of which we've talked about before. There is some additional information on body language and communicating with empathy. Those are awesome. And that will help as well with your essay, along with, of course, just helping you learn new things. You do have two interactive exercises this week. Again, those are not for a grade, but they will help you solidify the topics for your assignments. The first one is focused on creating a reference page. We've been doing that, but this week it's kind of even more critical because it's your most formal essay assignment. And then the 7.2 is going to help you navigate different kinds of academic writing. So these will help you not only, of course, as you complete your essay this week, but also going forward because you will be writing for other classes besides English in your college career. Unit 7's discussion board is about credibility. And again, it's focused on the movie clip from the movie Tin Men. So you'll watch that, and then you're going to use that to evaluate information. It can sometimes be hard to determine what is factual online. There are so many elements to consider, such as the author, the validity of the information, and company sponsorships. To help us look more deeply into the analysis of multimedia and social media, we're going to look at the movie clip of Tin Men. And then decide what you notice, discuss what you notice as it relates to evaluating information. Now, it's interesting because, of course, the Tin Men clip is not about social media or digital literacy. It is a much more old-fashioned way of communicating that we might have seen and we might still see when people are trying to sell us something. So kind of keep that in mind. But the skills to navigate what's credible and what's not credible translate from the real world to digital and back the other direction. So there are some questions to kind of help you as you navigate and create your response. First of all, is credibility. Do you find the two men in the clip credible? Are they presenting reliable information? And those could be, one could be yes and one could be no. Like there are people who come across as very credible, and then it turns out they are lying to us. But there's also people who may seem like they don't really know what they're talking about, but they give us good information. So kind of think about both sides of that. Would you consider them to be good communicators? Do they have an understanding of their audience? Do they have a clear purpose, even if they do not say it out loud? I mentioned earlier sales. Oftentimes, when people are trying to sell us something, they don't tell us they're trying to sell us something. So is it a clear purpose, even if it's not a spoken purpose? So feel free to write about any of those questions or really anything else that caught your interest in the movie clip that relates to what we're learning. As usual, you are required to respond to at least two of your classmates, and I'm going to really encourage you this week to avoid any temptation to run any of your responses through something like ChatGPT. I want to hear what you have to say, not what a computer somewhere has to say. I know it's really hard sometimes to come up, especially when we're trying to respond to others. It's hard to come up with what to say. It's definitely hard to come up with a whole paragraph worth of information, but I really encourage you to do this on your own response. Most people are having a pretty good time with that. It's fairly easy, but when you are responding to others, I want you to only give me 3 to 5 sentences, and I want at least one of those to be a question for your classmate. Okay, that's it, and totally from your own perspective. So that's your discussion this week. Now, the big assignment, of course, is the essay. And this is called the Communication and Transferable Skills. It is our biggest, longest paper that we're writing in English 107. It's still only 3 paragraphs, but it is a fully developed essay. Each of those paragraphs is going to be at least 6 sentences. It is, it's a full essay. So let's take a look at the assignment sheet first, and then we'll take a look at the sample that I will also share with you. Oh, that was the sample. Sorry, I clicked the wrong link. Okay, so here's the assignment sheet. As usual, it gives us all of our criteria. In the previous unit, you considered a writer's position when you did your annotated bibliography. Now you will explore your own ideas surrounding communication and other soft skills to create a short paper on the subject. Review the articles and resources on communication in this week's readings and resources. Then you're going to write a short paper of 3 paragraphs that addresses the topics below. So you have a given topic in each paragraph. In the first paragraph, you're going to focus on the following. What role will verbal and nonverbal communication have in your future career? Begin by explaining how good verbal and nonverbal communication will help you in the career that you have decided to pursue. Why would you consider them to be important in your future career? And you're going to include information from one of the articles in this week's unit in your own words. This week is about body language, so therefore nonverbal communication. So you can include anything that you learned that is relevant to nonverbal communication, and you're going to then cite that article using the in-text citation and having the item on the reference entry. The the APA citations are provided for you just like they have been in the past. But in the in-text citation, you're going to need to use the author's last name, the year, and if it's available, a page number. If it's not available, you wouldn't use a page number. You just have the author's last name and the year. You may also mention the author's name in the sentence. And if you do that, you can just put the year inside the in-text citation. You don't have to repeat the author's name. So that's paragraph 1. You're going to be using this week's readings and resources for paragraph 1. In paragraph 2, you're going to use last week's readings on soft skills. So in the second paragraph, address the following. Review your annotated bibliography from Unit 6. Pick one additional soft skill from the articles in the Unit 6 readings and resources and answer the following questions. What is the soft skill you chose? Why would you consider the soft skill you picked to write about important to your future career? And in paragraph 2, you're going to use an actual direct quotation from that article to support your answers to the questions above. So in the first paragraph, you're paraphrasing, you're putting it in your own words, but you're still giving credit to the author. In the second paragraph, you're using a direct quote. So you'll introduce the quote, it'll have quotation marks around it, and then you'll still also have that in-text citation with the author's last name, the year, and if possible, a page number. Now, there was at least one article last week that did not have an author. So if you don't have an author, you use the title instead. And we'll take a look at that when we look at the reference page. In the third paragraph, you're going to answer the following questions. So the third paragraph, you don't have to use any research at all. If you do use some, you'll cite it as well. How does your understanding of digital literacy help you develop communication and the soft skill mentioned above? So you will have at least 3 pages. You will have the title page, APA title page. You will have the essay. It'll start on page 2. It will be double spaced. The paragraphs will have the first lines indented, plain double spacing. Now, because it's 3 paragraphs of at least 6 sentences each, that may be longer than 1 page. It may not, but it might be. If it goes on to page 3, right, if it goes on to page 3, then your reference page would be page 4. So you will have a reference page after, excuse me, after the full essay. Okay, the articles all have the references available. Of course, you also created those APA citations and included those in your annotated bibliographies last week from Unit 6. You'll use one from that unit and you'll use one from this unit. Your references will be in alphabetical order, so not in the order that they come necessarily in the essay. All right. The rubric, of course, specifies the title page is complete and correct. If you do that, you get the full points. This time you can get partial credit, but by now we should be knowing how to do our APA title pages. Paragraph 1, did it answer the questions about communication? Did you use a paraphrase and a cited article? Paragraph 2, questions about soft skills. Again, this time it'll have a quote in it. The quote itself is also a line item directly below, but part of that paragraph development is having that quote. And then paragraph 3 fully addresses the question about digital literacy. Quote, it's either included or not included. And then the reference page is correct and 100% correct. You get full credit and so on and so forth. Paragraph length, are they each 6 or more sentences? If not, unfortunately, you lose some points for that. And then finally, of course, the APA formatting, grammar, punctuation, all of that good stuff. Okay, so let's take a look at the sample. I'm going to pause for just 1 second while I pull that up. Okay, so we are now looking at the Word document. You can, of course, use the template, but I will also give you this document, so everything is already kind of pre-set up for you. I will go ahead and change the date to this Sunday, which is June 15th. I should know that because my birthday is June 14th. So I do know the date this week. June 15th, 2025. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at the document. We have 3 paragraphs. Notice we have 3 paragraphs, and it is more than 1 page because, again, if it's 6 sentences long, that does take up some space. We have the references page, and I do have several of the ones that were here already that you may be using for each of the things. You'll notice they are in alphabetical order. Now, you can use different ones. You only will probably have 2 references on your reference page, but I have more than one just to kind of give you the samples here. If you look back into the paragraphs, and of course I have some things that are not real, but I also have some information for you. So there's reminders about what you're doing in each paragraph. The first one, what role will verbal and nonverbal communication have in your future career? That's what when you're going to focus on the readings from this week. Now, I didn't use one of the readings for this week when I did my little kind of sample, but you will use this week's readings. But I wanted to include one that didn't have an author so that you could see what that would look like. It also doesn't have a page number because it was from a website. So according to the U.S. Department of Labor, give the information. It's not in quotation marks because I've put it in my own words. Well, of course, I've put it in nonsense words here. And then in the parentheses, you have what comes first on the reference page, which is the title in this case in italics because it does not have an author. This is another one, using your body language to be persuasive. This is another one that would not have an author. So you would use using your body in quotation marks, or actually not quotation marks and not italics. It'll match what's on here. Okay. Now for Burl, you would have Burl. For Hartley and Carriage, you would have Hartley and Carriage. Second paragraph has the direct quotation in it. You'll notice it has the quotation marks around it. And I gave you 2 different samples so you can see what those would look like. Burl did not have page numbers, but it does have paragraph numbers. And Hartley and Carriage has the date and it has the actual page numbers. Now, the third paragraph, of course, does not have any direct quotation or paraphrase in it, but if you do use something, feel free to include citation for that as well. All right, there you go. There are your marching orders for this week. If you have questions about it, please try to come live to the workshop on Tuesday night. It's a great time to ask those questions. All right, take care, everybody. Have a great week, and I will see you again in week 8 for our last week.